My mom texted me, "We're only having your sister's family this year. No call. No explanation." Just a single line lighting up my screen like I'd been quietly erased. So I typed back, "Have a good time." Then I set the phone down, let the silence fill the room, and looked out at the snow pressing against my window. They had no idea what I'd built while they weren't looking, no idea I owned a $6 million estate tucked in the Colorado mountains. That text didn't break me. It rewired me, because this Thanksgiving I wasn't the one being left out. I was the one making the guest list. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, hit like and drop a comment. Where are you listening from? Tell me if you've ever had to draw your own line with family, so I know I'm not the only one. When people ask about my family, I usually say we're complicated. It's the polite version of the truth. The truth is, my parents Diane and Robert built a household around appearances. My older sister Elise was the centerpiece, the picture they wanted everyone to see. I was the afterthought standing just outside the frame. Elise was the golden child. She had the smile that made strangers stop, the grades that earned applause, the perfect hair my mom still gushes about in old photos. I was the kid who won second place in the state science fair, holding up a ribbon while my parents were on the phone bragging about Elise making varsity cheer. I can still hear it. "Isn't she incredible? A sophomore on varsity." My mom said that, while I was standing right there, ribbon still in my hand. My dad laughed already, planning to call the grandparents with the real news. That was the rhythm of my childhood, Elise's triumphs broadcast like breaking news, mine treated like background noise. When I built a photo sorting app at 15, I was so proud I ran downstairs to show my dad. He glanced for 5 seconds, said, "That's good, Nora," and turned to tell my mom about Elise being nominated for homecoming court. By the time I was accepted into MIT, the silence was predictable. My mom's first words weren't congratulations. They were, "That's far from home, isn't it?" My dad added, "If that's what you want." They didn't come to visit once in 4 years, not once. I watched their vacations play out online, Florida beaches, California wine tours, all with Elise and her husband Tyler in the photos. Tyler's family was everything my parents wanted to be successful. Elegant, socially important. When Elise married him, the wedding had 8 bridesmaids in matching lilac dresses. I wasn't one of them. I spent most of the reception in the kitchen helping the catering staff because someone said they were short-handed. My mom cried when Elise danced with my dad, and no one noticed I wasn't at my assigned table. After college, I threw myself into work. I started in tech companies around Boston, learning the hard way how to survive. When I launched my first startup at 26, I thought maybe finally they'd be proud. Instead, when it failed, my dad said, "You're not cut out for business. Be practical, like your sister." I hung up, stared at the wall, and decided I'd never ask them for help again. But not everyone saw me as invisible. Grandma Ruth did. She was the quiet force in our family, the one person who never compared me to Elise. She'd call on Sundays just to ask how I was really doing. No pretense, no judgment. I remember her saying once, "One day you'll build something they can't ignore." She didn't know how right she'd be. I read my mother's message again that night, the glow of the phone reflecting off the dark kitchen window. "We're only having your sister's family this year." 10 simple words, but it felt like they'd been rehearsing them my entire life. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I just set it down beside the sink next to a plate I'd washed and never put away, like everything in this family, unfinished. I poured myself a glass of water and let the silence settle. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the loud way I used to be. The rage had gone quiet, heavy, deliberate. Because somewhere between their last insult and this message, I had changed. I thought about all the versions of me they'd dismissed: the girl with the science fair ribbon, the college student they never visited, the woman who called asking for help and got told she wasn't cut out for business. I remembered sitting in that tiny apartment in Boston years ago, eating noodles at a desk made out of an old door. I could still hear my dad's voice echoing through the phone, "Be practical, like your sister." Maybe that's what they wanted for me, to stay small. Maybe that's why they never asked questions after I stopped sharing details about my life. Because if they didn't know, they couldn't be wrong. I walked to the window and stared at the faint skyline, the city lights stretching like a constellation of second chances. They thought I was still living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make it. They had no idea what I'd built in the shadows of their indifference. A year earlier, I had sold my cybersecurity company for $320 million. The ink on the contract was barely dry when I bought a property in Colorado, 50 acres of land wrapped in mountains and silence. 6 bedrooms, a guest house, a view that made even the sky look expensive. It was more than a house. It was proof that I'd survived without them. I hadn't told anyone, not Grandma Ruth, not even my closest friends from MIT. I wanted to keep something that was mine alone, a life untouched by comparison. But now, looking at that text, I realized I wasn't the one left out. They were. I smiled faintly. Maybe this year Thanksgiving would be different. Maybe this time I'd write the guest list. The next morning, the mountains outside my window were buried under a sheet of white. The first snow of the season had come overnight, quiet, deliberate, like it knew I was planning something. I sat on the deck of my Colorado home with a mug of coffee and my laptop open. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading Thanksgiving. I was designing it. I opened my contacts list and started calling. "Uncle Henry," I said, "what are you doing for the holiday?" He hesitated. "Your mom said it's just immediate family this year." "Right," I answered softly. "Guess that means us, too." One by one, I called everyone who had been a fixture at our old Thanksgiving dinners, Aunt Linda and her 3 kids, Aunt Carol, Uncle Stephen, and Karen, even a few of my cousins who lived out of state. Every single one of them said the same thing: "Your mom told us she's keeping it small this year." By the time I hung up the last call, the pattern was clear. My parents had cut 20-some relatives from the list, not because there wasn't space, but because Elisa's in-laws were more impressive. Doctors, lawyers, social polish. My family had become a performance, and anyone who didn't fit the script was edited out. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the peaks turning gold in the sunrise. Then I called the one person I trusted completely. Grandma Ruth picked up on the second ring. "Nora, sweetheart." "Grandma," I said, trying not to sound too proud. "How do you feel about spending Thanksgiving in Colorado?" She laughed. "As long as I don't have to cook, I'm in." "Perfect," I said. "And bring your appetite." That afternoon, I started planning. I called a private chef from Denver, a man named Marco who'd worked at a Michelin-starred restaurant. I hired a photographer. I arranged flights, hotel rooms, and car services for 35 guests. Everyone I called sounded both shocked and delighted. Most of them hadn't seen me in years. None of them knew what I'd built. As I moved through the house past the stone fireplace, the long dining table, the windows framing the mountains, I could almost feel the space waking up. The air hummed with a kind of quiet purpose. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming something I'd lost years ago, a sense of belonging. By the end of the week, everything was set. Flights booked, gifts wrapped. The guest rooms were ready, each one holding a small personal gift. Fly rods, bracelets, books, little reminders that I'd been paying attention even when they hadn't. That night, as I reviewed the final list, my phone lit up with a new message. It was from Elise. "Hey, just checking, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?" I smiled, typed back, "Spending it with family who actually wants me there." Thanksgiving morning arrived under a cold, perfect sky. The sun climbed over the ridgeline, spilling light across the snow and glass of my Colorado estate. Inside, the air smelled like rosemary butter and wood smoke. Marco, the chef I'd hired, was already in the kitchen orchestrating a small army of dishes. My guests would start arriving within the hour. I stood at the window for a long time, holding a mug of coffee I wasn't drinking. For the first time in years, I felt still. No pretending, no waiting for someone else to notice me. This day was mine. The first car pulled up at 9. Uncle Stephen stepped out holding his wife Karen's hand. They stopped on the driveway, staring up at the house like they'd stepped into another world. "Holy hell, Nora," he said when I opened the door. "This is yours, all mine," I said, smiling. "Welcome home." Karen looked around, eyes wide. "It's beautiful. I can't believe your parents didn't want to see this." "Their loss," I said, and I meant it. Over the next 2 hours, the house filled with laughter and footsteps. Aunt Linda arrived with her kids. Aunt Carol brought a pie. Cousins hugged me at the door like they hadn't seen me in a decade. People walked through the halls, running their hands over the walls, taking pictures, gasping at the view. Even my old MIT friends, Rachel and Ethan, flew in from Boston. They whistled when they saw the guest house. By noon, everyone had settled in. Some people were helping Marco in the kitchen. Others were sitting by the fire swapping stories. The sound of conversation echoed through the room's real, unfiltered joy. For the first time, I wasn't the quiet one standing on the sidelines. I was at the center, not because I demanded it, but because I'd built it. At 2 o'clock, Marco carried out the turkey. The dining room glowed with candles and laughter. 2 long tables stretched end to end, draped in white linen and covered in food, roasted vegetables, ham rolls, pies, things I couldn't even name. Everyone took their seats, and for a second, I just stood there and took it all in. I lifted my glass. "I just want to say thank you all for coming," I said. "This means more to me than you know. I wanted to spend today with people who actually want to be here." A few people murmured cheers, glasses lifted. Uncle Henry smiled and added, "To Nora, who built all this from nothing and was kind enough to share it with us." The moment hung in the air, warm and real. I opened my mouth to reply when a car door slammed outside. Everyone turned toward the window. A taxi was idling at the gate. The passenger door opened and out stepped Grandma Ruth, coat-buttoned, suitcase in hand, eyes sparkling like she'd just pulled off the greatest trick of her life. I ran to the door. "Grandma, you made it. You think I was going to miss this," she said, hugging me tight. "I told your parents I wasn't feeling well enough to travel. Then I bought a ticket online. Figured it out all by myself, too." The room erupted in laughter. She fit right in, moving from person to person, hugging everyone, eating 2 full plates of food. The afternoon unfolded like something from a movie, kids running outside in the snow, music playing, people gathered around the fireplace sharing stories. When the photographer arrived, we took group photos on the back deck with the mountains behind us. Everyone was smiling so wide it hurt to look. The photographer kept saying, "This is the happiest Thanksgiving I've ever seen." Later that evening, after dessert, I sat beside Grandma Ruth near the fire. She leaned toward me and said quietly, "You know I'm proud of you, Nora. You didn't just survive. You made a place for everyone else to belong." My throat tightened. I wanted to say thank you, but before I could, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Then it buzzed again and again. Notifications stacked on top of each other, messages, calls, social media tags. I picked it up and stared. Photos from the day were flooding online. Best Thanksgiving ever at Nora's Colorado estate. Who needs Ohio when you've got the Rockies? Grateful for family that shows up. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. The final post stopped me cold. Rachel had tagged me in a group photo, everyone smiling, arms around each other, the mountains glowing in the background. The caption read, "Some people talk about family. Some people rebuild it." Then the call started. My mother, my father, Elise. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I silenced it once. It rang again. Grandma raised an eyebrow. "Go on," she said. "See what they have to say." I answered. "Hi, Mom." Her voice came sharp and nervous. "What is going on? Why are there pictures of you hosting Thanksgiving in Colorado? Why is your grandmother there? We thought she was sick." "She was sick," I said. "Sick of your Thanksgiving plans." There was a pause, then my dad's voice in the background. "Where did you get the money for all this?" "I sold my company last year," I said. $320 million. The silence that followed was so long I could hear the fireplace crackle. Then my mom whispered, "Why didn't you tell us I tried?" I said evenly. "Last Christmas." "You were too busy talking about Elise's son's piano recital." My dad's voice rose hard and defensive. "You made us look bad, Nora. Everyone's talking about this." I let out a breath. "I didn't make you do anything. You uninvited half the family because they weren't good enough for Elise's in-laws. I just invited them here instead." Elise's voice came next, tight and anxious. "Do you know what this looks like? Our Thanksgiving looks pathetic compared to yours." "That's not my problem," I said quietly. Then another voice cut through the chaos. Grandma Ruth, standing beside me, said, "Put it on speaker." I did. "Mom," my dad asked, startled. "You're there." "Of course I'm here," she said, calm and clear. "And it's about time you listened to someone other than yourselves." She took a slow breath. "You've taken Nora for granted her whole life. You pushed her aside, made her feel small so you could polish Elise's crown. And now you're embarrassed because the world saw it. She didn't do this to hurt you. She did it because she wanted to spend the holiday with people who care about her." Nobody spoke. The silence on the other end was heavy. My father mumbled something that sounded like "we'll talk later" and hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time, my heartbeat finally slowing. Grandma squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing," she said. "I don't know," I whispered. "Maybe I was being petty." "No," she said softly. "You were being honest. There's a difference." Outside, snow had started to fall again, thick and slow. Inside, laughter picked back up music hummed through the speakers and warmth filled every corner of the house. As the night faded, I looked around the room at the cousins, the aunts, the friends who'd flown across the country to be there. My phone was still buzzing somewhere on the counter, but I didn't care. I finally had what I'd been waiting for my whole life, a seat at my own table. A week passed before I answered any of their calls. By then, the snow around the estate had deepened, softening the world into silence. When I finally unlocked my phone, there were dozens of messages waiting. The first was from Elise. "I've always been jealous of you," it began. "You got to choose your own path. I just did what Mom and Dad wanted. I'm sorry they hurt you because of me." I stared at her words for a long time, unsure whether to believe them. Still, it didn't sound like the sister who once told me I wasn't bridesmaid material. It sounded human. I typed back, "Thanks for saying that." It was all I could manage. Then came a text from my father. "Grandma was right. We were unfair. I'm proud of you, Nora." An hour later, one from my mom. The house looked beautiful in the photos. "Can we come see it?" I didn't reply right away. I read the messages over and over, trying to tell whether this was guilt or something closer to understanding. For days, I kept the phone on my nightstand silent. Finally, I sent a short response. "Come for Christmas. Just you, Dad, and Elise." They arrived 3 weeks later. A taxi wound up the long drive through the snow, stopping at the steps. When they got out, they just stood there, heads tilted back, eyes wide at the sight of the glass and stone against the white. My dad's voice cracked first. "Nora." "This is incredible." Inside, they moved slowly through the rooms, touching things like they were afraid they might break. They stopped in front of the wall where I'd framed the magazine covers, Forbes Business Insider, the articles about Cyber Shield. My dad traced a headline with his finger. "You never told us," he said quietly. "I tried, I answered. You just weren't listening." At dinner that night, the silence was gentler. My mom set her fork down and looked at both of us. "We failed you," she said. "We pushed Elise too hard and didn't give you what you needed." "I'm sorry." My dad nodded. "We can't change the past, but we want to start over." I didn't trust the moment completely, but for once I didn't need to. Grandma Ruth raised her glass and smiled. "To new beginnings," she said, "and to people who finally showed up." The table clinked with quiet laughter. Snow fell outside, soft and endless. For the first time in years, the air around us felt warm. On Christmas night, after the dishes were washed and the fire burned low, I walked out onto the deck. The mountains were black against the snow, the sky full of quiet stars. Behind me, I could hear laughter, my parents and Elise playing cards with Grandma Ruth, the sound oddly easy, almost normal. I wrapped my coat tighter and smiled to myself. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But maybe that was okay. The girl who used to beg to be seen was gone. In her place stood a woman who built her own seat at the table and invited others to join. Family isn't who invites you first. It's who shows up when you're not needed. I took one last look at the house glowing behind me, then whispered, "Finally." If you've ever had to draw a line with family, I get it. It's hard. But sometimes it's the only way to protect your peace. Tell me in the comments if you've ever been there. Your stories remind me I'm not alone. And if this one hit home, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from.